Yes, well, I'm back again. I think I'm going to finish this off for today because I've got a lot of other editing to do. But this particular testimony came about after a friend of mine who I met at a telecoms meeting, because I worked from home for a time. Again, that's more testimony, but on this particular occasion, Mike phoned me up, and we've been working together in the telecoms arena for about 18 months. But he phoned me and said, I've got a problem at the moment, and my wife has sectioned me. I said, what are you saying, sectioned? There's nothing wrong with you, you're mentally fine. And he was under a bit of stress, to be sure, but he said, I'm in the local mental hospital in Bristol, sectioned. I can't go anywhere, and I've got a senior staff nurse who wants to have a word with you, and he wants to know how we actually met. Now, I said, this is a bit bizarre, Mike. And he said, well, I've been in here a few days, and I know that certain things are happening. Now, I knew that his office in Bristol had been bugged by a group of people connected to other stuff, and he was very much developing an environmental agency to help with utilities and with heat pumps and that kind of thing. There was a lot of stuff going on, and people wanted to, I guess, pick up the information that Mike had, because he did his research, and a very intelligent guy. In fact, today, some years on, he's suffering from mercury poisoning, and you can listen to his testimony on the KCTV media site if you go into the YouTube section. But going back to that point, this guy who was the senior staff nurse said, I need to know how you met Mike, because Mike has given us a particular account of that. And I said, well, that was quite simple, really. It was about 18 months ago. It was a telecoms training at High Wycombe, where about 400 agents from around the country were gathered, and it was lunchtime, and we were all going back to our seats to take more notes, that kind of thing, and listen to other people talking about the telecoms market, and very fascinating stuff. And I basically wanted to work from home. I was getting over an accident, so it was an ideal situation for me. But this situation at lunchtime, I'm walking across the concourse to my seat, and a group of guys were in front of me, and the sun, as it were, was behind them, so I couldn't see their faces. And as I walked towards them, I heard this voice clearly say to me, there's a man that you're going to see in a second. He's quite tall, over 6 foot, and I want you to go up to him and tell him he's not joining the Freemasons. And I don't know whether you can imagine how that felt, but I thought, well, crikey, where did that come from? And the next thing I'm right in front of this guy, and I said, I sort of put my right hand out to shake his hand. I said, you don't know me directly, but this particular person to my right does, and his name is Alan Anfield, and he can verify my background, but I have a prophetic word for you. And of course everybody was quite keen to hear what I was going to say, because otherwise I was going to be looked like a complete idiot. But this voice that was in my heart said, now give him this prophetic word. And I said, right, well, you don't know me from Adam, and I don't know what your name is, but the reality is that 3 weeks ago, in 2 different wine bars in Bristol down White Ladies Road, you were wined and dined by 2 different Freemasonry chapters, or I didn't really want to call it really, but he said, yeah, I understand. And as he looked at me, he said, how did you know this? How did you know this? And he fell to his knees, and I said, you don't need to fall down. He said, I can't, I'm amazed that you know what you've just told me, because we've never met before. Well, cutting a long story short, that's how we met. And we had many other divine appointments, because we realised soon after that the Lord had brought us together to work together on some of the accounts. We actually went to see, believe it or not, Microsoft in Reading and a couple of other top blue chip companies. So coming back to the situation that Mike's in this hospital, this guy has obviously asked the question. I have shared this information back to him, and I said, why do you need to know? He said, well, we would like to see you tomorrow. Is it possible for you to come down and see Mike, and we'd like to ask some more questions? And I said, okay. But as this guy was a little bit kind of nervous with me, and I said, look, you may not understand the supernatural, but I could share much. I believe God's going to do a miracle for you tomorrow. And in fact, you'll be part of that miracle. You'll be in it. And he said, what do you mean? Now, I said, well, what's the time of year? Today is May. The cherry blossom is on the trees. The temperature outside is between 20, 21, 22 degrees. It's a beautiful spring come summer day, isn't it? I said, but you know what? God's going to do this for you. Between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, snow is going to fall over much of Bristol down to Bristol, and you will be caught up in this snow in your car. 4 inches of snow will fall, but all this snow will have melted by 12 o'clock when I come through the doors that you will want me to come through, because the Lord showed me the doors, the vision of going through these doors. And I said, as I come through these doors, Mike will have his bags packed, and you will just look at me and you will say nothing to me as I walk past you, only to say my name. He said, well, I'm looking forward to seeing this. He said, I don't believe in miracles. I said, that's the reason why I've told you what God's going to do for you tomorrow. Anyway, we said goodbye, and I said, see you tomorrow, Mike. The phone went down, and I got on with whatever I was doing that afternoon. I think I was reading. So I told my wife what had happened. She just smiled at me. And of course, the following day, I woke up and it was a beautiful May day where I was living at that time, but due south overnight, as I was looking at the weather forecast, a freak storm, a polar low had formed just north of Ireland and had swept through the Irish Sea down over Wales and dumped 4 inches of ice over Bristol and Bristol. So I drove down to Bristol, to the hospital, and as the Lord showed me, the snow had melted, the cherry blossom was still on the trees, and Mike was ready for me to take him back home. And of course there were people waiting for me. They didn't stop me, because that's what the Lord showed me would happen. And Mike's bags were packed, and we took them out to the car, and we drove back to his home address, where I shared this with his wife Val. God does amazing stuff. I give him all the glory, because out of that so much happened. It was an incredible time. There are many other testimonies that I will share with you. Okay, bye for now.